This piece of paper can change the way that you work and can change how productive you actually are using just this one sheet of paper. And let me tell you how. It's called the burner list. And I recently came across an author called Jake Knapp, and he's written a book, quite a best-selling book called Sprint. And he used to work at Google Ventures and came up with this method of focusing on a specific to-do as opposed to writing traditional to-do lists where your priorities are all over the place and they're not defined narrowly. And as I mentioned, I am reading his book Sprint and I really enjoy it. I think it's such a useful book that really kind of shows you how to test new ideas in a short space of time. And my name's Amina if you are new here. I post every Wednesday and Sunday, so if you are new here, I'd love for you to subscribe to see more content like this and also to find out how this sheet of paper is going to change your life. So as I mentioned, Jake Knapp worked at Google and he used to tell his employees how to focus on one priority task a week. Now that probably sounds crazy because if you look at your to-do list now, I'm sure it is as long as your arm with lists of things that haven't been categorically organized into a way that makes sense and into a way that means that you're actually getting what needs to get done. So he calls this list the burner list, and the reason why is not because it contains all of your kind of to-do list and all the tasks that you need to write down and need to do. And that's the point. He says that actually you're not meant to have all these things and capture all of this information on one sheet of paper. Rather, you should focus on your priorities and maybe a slight backup to that priority. So he takes a sheet of paper and what he does, he splits it down the middle. So splits one sheet of paper down the middle. And then on the left-hand side of this sheet of paper, that is where your priority task sits. And he calls this the front burner. And then on the right-hand side, he calls this the back burner. So that's tasks that you do after you've completed this task. However, this back burner column is split into another column. So down the middle, it's split into another column, and he calls this bit the kitchen sink. So like everything else goes in there. Everything else that's not important, not a secondary to do, but it's just anything else just goes in the kitchen sink, and that's down here on the right hand side. So essentially it comes down to the front burner on the left, the back burner on the right, but the back burner does not get the full column, it gets half the column, with the other half being the kitchen sink. Now, you're probably thinking, how is this going to change my life? Well, let me tell you. What you write in the front burner is the one most priority task that you want to complete that week. So not 2 tasks, not 3 tasks, not a couple of mini tasks, but one project that you're working on that you want to complete or you want to work on this week goes there. And then the rest of the space just stays empty. And the reason why, he calls this counter space, and he says you don't want to overclutter the space where you're writing down the task that you're working on, and that's most important because it takes away from what it is that you're actually doing. And I completely agree. I found that when I write down to-do lists, and even though the most important task can be on the top, when I'm looking at all the other tasks that have accumulated beneath it, it stresses me out and it actually detracts from my focus. So having the rest of the space empty, it means I'm able to focus on that number one project, but you have got space to add as you go along. So if I'm able to finish that particular project task, then I can then work on the next thing, but it's still related to the overall project that I'm working on. So it shouldn't be unrelated. It shouldn't be to do with a side thing that you're doing or another request that you're working on. But whatever you write here on the front burner should be tasks that are related to one particular focus, one particular project. Then, as I mentioned, on the right hand side you have the back burner, and on here would be your second most important project. And again, you leave some space underneath just so as you go along and as you get it done, you can then tick it off and then work on the next sort of related task to that particular project. So it's a second most important project. So for whatever reason, maybe you can't get that done, or it's on hold, or you've done what you can for now and you're waiting for feedback from your colleague, from your line manager, you can then move on to the second most important task, and that's really clear for you what it is that you need to do next. And then lastly, the kitchen sink. What goes in there? Well, like I said to you earlier, anything else. So this can be related to project 1, it can be related to project 2, it can be something completely different, something completely random, it can be just anything random. And he says in his blog post that I'll leave down below that although that goes against productivity, you know, you're supposed to be focused and you're supposed to only put down what is related to each other and you're supposed to have small tasks that are achievable. Actually, by having that kitchen sink where you just ditch everything else, you're just like unloading what your to-dos are in your mind. And by doing that, you can clearly see your main to-do, you can clearly see your secondary to-do, and then everything else just stuck down there in the bottom. And if and when you get time to do it, you can go down there, but they are not a priority. And he compares it, interestingly, actually, this is probably a really good analogy. He compares it to a chef. If a chef is cooking, he's gonna first, you know, he's gonna focus all his energy on his main course, his main dish. He's gonna flip that first, he's gonna work on that first, and then he's gonna go to his secondary dish, or maybe, you know, the dessert, and he's gonna deal with that. And then if he has time, he might deal with some decor, whatever it is. But essentially, your priority should be the first, most important task. Then you move on to the second, and then the third is there for just dumping and really as a complete back burner, complete if you get time for it task. And what he says is this sheet of paper, this burner list gets replaced every so often. So this shouldn't be a burner list for the whole week. It can be for a day, it can be until you've completed it, it can be for a couple of days, and you can just keep on renewing it, keep on updating it. And it just means that you're keeping it fresh and you're keeping it kind of, I guess, going and organized. And actually, it's not meant to be a to-do list that contains all your to-dos. And I find this quite challenging to accept, because for me, a to-do list needs to contain all the things that I need to do, otherwise I won't do the things that I need to do. But actually, this helps you focus, and I've been trying this out since I've started reading his book a couple of weeks ago, and I do find it really useful because it really helps me identify what that priority task is, what the thing is that I need to do first, not what I want to do, not what seems right, not what looks right or what, you know, it's the most enjoyable, but actually what is that task that needs to get done first. That always goes on my left hand side. And I actually don't really use sheets of paper this large. I tend to just do it on a post-it note, because all you're doing is writing one thing on one side and then one on the other side, so you don't need to waste a whole sheet of paper for it. But essentially the idea is the left hand side priority, right hand side back burner, and then at the bottom kitchen sink, just everything else basically. It's a very interesting concept. And when I first read it like months ago, when I first read this particular blog post, I thought, all right, that sounds like someone's got a good idea, but is it actually going to work? And it does work. It does work for certain projects. I think to-do lists need to be played with, and the way that you deal with your productivity differs from person to person. So do think about how it might work for you. But I definitely found that for certain times of the day and for like certain moods that I'm in, this works better. So do try it out and let me know what you think. And if you have tried it out, let me know if it worked for you. I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts, because I haven't actually heard anyone that I know or like heard anyone speak about it. I just came across it on a blog post, so that was something new to me and something I just tried out on a whim. So do let me know what you think and if you would try it out yourself. And if you do try it out, come back and let me know if it worked and if it meant that you were able to focus a little bit more. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to see more from me. Subscribe right now, get me to 200k this year. That's my target, that's my goal, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.